Today on Investigate TV Plus, foster system failure.
I was literally just trying to make it on my own, and I didn't know how.
We examine why children are spending too long in foster care.
And the solution one couple brewed up to help those who age out of the system.
Plus, first responders in the sky.
To me, they're the angels. I know for a fact that she was given a second life for a reason.
An in-depth look at medical helicopters and the shortage of pilots putting patients at risk.
Then seeing double and triple. The small school that boasts more than a dozen sets of twins and triplets.
In-depth stories that inform and inspire. You're watching Investigate TV Plus.
Every child deserves a loving and stable home. I'm Tisha Powell.
And I'm Lee Zurich, but that's not happening for thousands of foster kids in our country.
Every year, about 500 million children in the U.S. are in foster care. That care is supposed to be temporary, and there's a federal law to ensure it is.
But most states aren't following that law called the Adoption and Safe Families Act, leaving some children in foster care for years longer than intended.
Investigative reporter Kristen Crowley has an in-depth look at the foster care crisis, how we got here, and one couple's mission to find a solution.
Tisha and Lee, that law has something called a 1522 provision. It means once a child has been in foster care for at least 15 of the last 22 months and reunification with a parent is out of the question, the state must work to find them a permanent home. When the law passed in 1997, about 22 states complied by quickly moving foster children to a permanent home. Now, only 7 are in compliance. Here's why that matters. The longer a child stays in foster care, statistically, the worse their outcome is. They're more likely to be homeless, struggle in school, and have behavioral issues.
Almost 1 in 5 children who enter foster care will be there for over 3 years. It's designed so that children don't just stay in foster care long term. Why? Because all the social science evidence shows that that is not good for children.
A Kansas couple who fostered their first child in 1980 have since helped hundreds of teens who aged out of the system into adults.
When there's a coffee shop on seemingly every corner, you know what to expect. Cappuccinos, lattes, pastries. What sets Connect Cafe apart isn't what they serve, it's who they serve. And we're not talking about the customers.
This cafe specifically employs children who have aged out of the foster system.
Right. The Kansas City, Kansas Cafe was an idea brewed up by Lori and Randy Ross.
It's about working to get them to the point to where they can go to another employer and be successful.
But before we dip into the cafe, you need to learn more about the Rosses and the foster system. Early on in the married couple's life, they agreed to foster one child. They welcomed a little girl, and that was that. Until it wasn't.
We ended up caring for over 400 kids in the years that we were fostering and adopting.
400 children. How is that even possible?
A little bit at a time.
400 fosters, resulting in 23 adoptions and a lifelong mission to help children. They created the nonprofit Foster Adopt Connect, which advocates for foster children and connects them with families. But as passionate as the Rosses are about foster care, they wish it didn't have to exist.
Randy and I are nice people. Our kids love us. But in general, if a child has an opportunity to grow up with a member of their family, they're going to be far better off than having to mesh with the family of strangers.
The goal of foster care is to bring children and parents back together. But in the 1990s, Congress realized agencies were spending years waiting for that to happen, when parents were unengaged or making no progress. That left the children feeling the consequences, suffering in limbo.
Children need a permanent family, and when they're in foster care, they're often moving from one home to the next, and that placement instability leads towards poor outcomes in education, in health, in their social well-being.
So lawmakers passed the Adoption and Safe Families Act. After a certain amount of time and lack of involvement from the parents, states must work to terminate a parent's rights. The child can be adopted and not linger in foster care. But Ryan Hamlin with the National Council for Adoption says most states aren't following that law. He says as many as 100,000 children can't be adopted who would otherwise be eligible because the states haven't terminated their parents' rights, leaving the children in the system for years longer than intended.
When 1 in 5 children is going to spend over 3 years in foster care, when over 10% are being emancipated without any permanency, without any permanent family, we have failed all of those children.
Do you feel like the system failed you?
Yes. Yeah.
Samantha Curry aged out of the system nearly 2 decades ago.
I was literally just trying to make it on my own, and I didn't know how.
She says it took years to land on her feet.
I've been to about 10 different foster homes.
Antonio Ward is still trying to find his footing.
What has life been like for you now, post foster care, being on your own?
Rough. Very rough. My apartment I am in now, I'm like 2 months behind on rent.
He aged out of the Florida foster system just a few years ago. Every day, he says, is a struggle.
Who do you lean on when you need help?
Don't have nobody but myself.
And that brings us back to Connect Cafe.
A year ago, I was in a mental hospital. So I didn't think I was getting nowhere. I left home at 15 because it was a very toxic household.
Diamond Preston is now 17 and says getting the job at Connect Cafe was a lifeline.
When I started working here, they became a part of the support system.
What's your favorite part about working here?
Randy's.
Wonderful.
Good guy?
Yeah. I feel like I've never had a bad day here. And I have bad days, just not when I'm here. You have a great day.
Randy's kind of a charmer, so.
You bet.
But it's more than charm.
Thank you very much for doing that.
Making an impact.
The kids graduate from high school. We're making sure that one of us is there. We're part of the family.
We are creating solutions to system problems, and we'd invite anybody that's interested to reach out to us.
It's a connection any foster children otherwise wouldn't have.
As for the more than 40 states not in compliance with the Adoption Safe Families Act, experts say the Department of Health and Human Services has the power to hold those states accountable and could threaten their funding for not following the law. But that's never happened. So we asked HHS. The agency would not agree to an on-camera interview and did not answer our questions via email.
Still ahead, how a pregnancy with no symptoms,
nothing, no morning sickness, no kicking, no cravings, no heartburn,
results in an unexpected blessing.
To me, they're the angels. I know for a fact that she was given a second life for a reason.
Plus, a mother says her daughter is alive today thanks to a medical helicopter.
We reveal why demand is increasing for these services and how the healthcare system is struggling to keep up.
It does create a real problem that the industry as a whole is going to experience due to the shortage.
You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime online. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel at Investigate TV. You can catch stories and full episodes.
When it comes to a medical emergency, every second matters.
For people who live in rural areas, that help may often come from above. Over the past decade, demand for air ambulance services has grown more than 50%.
One factor, experts say, is a rising number of rural hospitals shutting their doors, like in Horton, Kansas, where in 2019, the community's only hospital was bulldozed to the ground.
We lost health care, which was very important for our senior citizens, everybody in general.
Since 2015, more than 100 rural hospitals have closed, and currently 30% of all rural hospitals in the country are at risk of closing.
They're very, very important just from every aspect between the jobs, the economy, the health and safety of the community members.
There's so much a small hospital offers that a large hospital don't. You know the people, and that makes them at ease because they know you.
As rural hospitals close and demand for medical flights grows, the healthcare industry faces another hurdle, a shortage of medical pilots.
Reporter Blair Miller flew with a crew to show us the critical need for these first responders and how they're helping people who need it most.
Beep, beep, beep.
In a moment, life can change. That moment for little Abigail Guzman came when she was a newborn. Congested with respiratory virus known as RSV, struggling to breathe with a fever over 103, she was fighting to live. Her mother and father raced to the hospital.
Her skin color was changing. Her lips were turning a little bit blue.
Abigail made it to a local hospital near Morrow, but she needed more medical resources at a bigger hospital. Doctors called for a medical helicopter to fly the girl to Children's Hospital of Atlanta as fast as possible.
I was just thinking the worst, and I just stood and I watched until I couldn't see it anymore.
Her medical flight, one of thousands in Georgia each year.
There's a very high usage of us in the area.
Here at this AirLife Georgia base in Kennesaw, flight crews told me how they now sometimes handle 5 to 6 flights in a 24-hour period. Some of them emergency trauma cases, others are hospital-to-hospital flights. Demand is high for medical helicopters for a few reasons. Hospitals face deep staffing shortages, and in some rural parts of the area, some medical facilities run out of beds, and patients are forced to go somewhere else.
The hospital's not able to keep that patient in-house because they're so saturated. They have to transport that patient to a larger facility.
Some of these medical helicopters, like here at AirLife Georgia, now have more resources on board.
A total of 4 bags of blood with 2 different types.
Flight nurse Amy Merritt showed me the bags of blood they now carry on every flight.
It's pretty unique for you all to be carrying actual blood
products, right. So instead of having to wait for the patient to get all the way to the hospital and then start the blood, we can bring the blood to them.
So when you're flying like this, how hard can it be to help someone when you're in the elements and you're trying to get from a scene to a facility?
Yeah, so there's a lot to manage all at once. For starters, it's obviously a more compact space.
We've also learned there's a shortage of pilots, and that could have an impact on the people on the ground who need that medical help the most.
What we're looking for is mostly, you can see a lot of power lines and towers.
This pilot flying us, a former Marine. Many of these pilots are former military, but now industry leaders are trying to attract pilots from other industries, like helicopter pilots who fly tourists at national attractions.
It does create a real problem that the industry as a whole is going to experience due to the shortage.
So you guys had career on wheels today, huh?
Back in Morrow, one-time patient Abigail Guzman is now doing much better, nearly 9 years after that medical flight. 9 years after her life nearly changed forever.
To me, they're the angels. I know for a fact that she was given a second life for a reason.
The average air ambulance trip is 52 miles and the cost can be significant. Without insurance, you're looking at $12,000 to $25,000 per flight. Experts say many private insurers will pay for at least some of the cost. Medicare may pay for air ambulance services, but only if ground transportation isn't available.
As for rural hospitals at risk of closing, the federal government created an interactive map tracking closures and how those still in operation are faring financially. Head to InvestigateTV.com for a link. You can also find our full investigation on rural hospital closures. Still ahead, the bond between twins is like no other.
Always have a brother to talk to.
We take you to the small town school that may have the most multiples.
But first, this woman went to the ER with stomach pain and ended up in labor.
There's no good way on God's green earth that I am giving birth.
An in-depth look at cryptic pregnancies and why it happens more often than you may think.
Our in-depth coverage continues. You can get connected to Investigate TV Plus on all social media platforms. When it comes to the natural signs of pregnancy, like a missed period, most people realize they're pregnant between 4 and 12 weeks after conception. However, about 1 in 475 pregnancies go unnoticed until about 20 weeks gestation.
And some may not know they're pregnant right up until they give birth.
It's called a cryptic pregnancy, and the Cleveland Clinic estimates it occurs in 1 out of every 2,500 pregnancies.
That's exactly what happened to a first-time mom in Arizona.
Reporter Michaela Marshall takes us to the city of Surprise outside of Phoenix to introduce us to a woman's little surprise.
Surprise!
Hi, Bubba.
This is Noble.
Oh, you're so sweet.
He was born weighing 8 pounds, 15 ounces. For his mom, Taylor Dobbins, life forever changed in a matter of hours.
Single with a cat to single with a cat and a baby.
She says she had no clue she was pregnant until she was in labor.
Nothing. No morning sickness, no kicking, no cravings, no heartburn.
On May 18th, Taylor says she woke up in pain, but went to work anyway. But the pain kept getting worse and was eventually so intense that she rushed to the ER, thinking maybe she had appendicitis.
And I'm like, something is really wrong here.
Nurses ran some tests, and then a doctor gave her the unexpected news that she was expecting and about 6 to 8 weeks along.
So we ran your blood work twice, and it turns out you are pregnant. I said, excuse me?
But the truth was even more shocking.
She says, so remember how I told you I think you're 6 to 8 weeks? I said, yeah. She goes, unfortunately, I was wrong. You were 38 weeks and 5 days. And I said, I was speechless. I'm like, there's no way.
The 24-year-old started to worry about having no prenatal care.
I was concerned that he was going to come out missing some fingers or some toes.
Taylor calls Noble's good health a miracle.
It's the best gift, honestly.
And remembers feeling a flood of emotions the first time she held her son.
He was perfect. He stopped crying instantly the minute I grabbed him.
Now she's doing her best to navigate motherhood, coping with humor and leaning on her village.
Was this the way that I planned it? No. But will we be okay once we figure it out? For sure. Definitely gonna be a process though.
The Cleveland Clinic lists risk factors for cryptic pregnancies, including recently giving birth, a condition that causes unpredictable periods like polycystic ovary syndrome or PCOS, and the use of birth control.
Still ahead, in a school just a fraction of the size of most, you'll find many multiples. We take you to the North Dakota school that boasts a surprising statistic.
You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime streaming online. Get the app for Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. They're free to download. Babies born from the same pregnancy or multiples share a unique bond with one another. The odds of having identical twins is about 1 in 250 pregnancies, and triplets about 1 in 10,000.
Keep that in mind as we take you to a North Dakota school district.
With fewer than 500 students, Bowman schools boast 13 sets of multiples, twins and triplets.
Wow. Reporter Jody Kurzman shows us how it's got the town wondering, what's in the water?
Maggie Johnson has a thing for basketball, but she's not sure it's her favorite sport. She and her twin brother Walker like a lot of sports.
Basketball, football, soccer.
The third graders are competitive on the court and in just about every other part of their lives too.
That's me.
Including who's older. Maggie barely wins that competition.
1 minute.
If there was a competition for the school with the most sets of twins and triplets, Maggie and Walker's school might be the winner.
That's me. I'm pretty positive.
At Bowman County School, there are 13 sets of multiples, 11 sets of twins, and 2 sets of triplets, from kindergarten to seniors.
Yeah, the water different here.
Identical twins Bowden and Bishop Duffield are the oldest multiples in the school.
It's pretty awesome to be a twin.
Look how cute we are. When we were little, we looked a lot alike, but as we grew up, we all kind of got our own personalities and just stopped looking alike.
The Headley triplets no longer look alike, but they're still grateful for each other.
If one triplet's gone, you always have another one.
That's me.
The Murnack triplets agree. Being a triplet is pretty cool.
Always have a brother to talk to.
Fraternal twins Hadley and E.J. Janikowski say being a twin is cool too, but also a little annoying.
We had to share a room for a very long time, so we had to share everything and we had to spend a lot of time together.
But they know that this time together is a gift, and being a part of this group of multiples is something pretty special.
That's crazy. 13 sets.
These 13 sets of multiples total 28 of the school's 492 students. That's about 5% of the student population, a number Hadley Janikowski had a hunch about.
I had a rough idea there was this many.
This picture will be a lasting reminder to all these multiples of just how lucky they are.
My favorite part of that story is when the camera is like going through all of them and the different reactions. Some of the twins or triplets are looking the same at the camera and some were totally different. I mean, who could have, it's just shocking that many.
Yeah, I think there was a little boy who crossed his eyes.
I think so too, right?
He was
like,
laugh.
I know, oh my goodness.
Lots of personality
Something
there.
in the water there.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for us on Investigate TV Plus. I'm Lee Zurich.
And I'm Tisha Powell. Thanks for watching.
On the next Investigate TV Plus,
I think it really does shine a light on how desperate times are for folks. A lot of these scammers are just one step ahead.
a critical public housing shortage opens the door for scammers to take advantage of unsuspecting people looking for a home.
I want no one else to experience what I already experienced.
An in-depth look at the hoax popping up across the country.